Don't worry, this story has a happy ending. On Friday, June 26th, 2020, my wife was sitting in her home office, working away diligently on whatever projects needed to be worked on for her job. This was amazing to me, as she had just received a second round of bad news in as many days. But let's start at the beginning. 1 week before this, my wife went in for her first mammogram. Well, she said, resigned, I'm getting older, so they gotta look at my girls. That day, they found a shadow. They weren't sure exactly what it was, so they scheduled her for a follow-up. It's probably nothing, the doctor said, but I'd like to be sure. Yesterday, my wife went in for the follow-up. This time, they really didn't like what they saw. They still weren't sure what it was, so they scheduled a biopsy. It's visually consistent with what we see in cancer, the doctor said, but I'm not certain. Let's pause here for a second. To tell someone they might have cancer and that they need to schedule an appointment to find out is just plain fucking absurd. Look, I know I have the IQ of a potato, but shouldn't there be a way to have a floating slot available to extract whatever sample they need at the same time as the screening? That way, instead of being told, this looks bad, come back next week, you'd hear, this looks bad, let's get you prepped for the next procedure. I can't speak for everyone, but I'll go out on a limb and say that if given the option of having a procedure immediately to find out whether or not you have cancer, or having to go home full of dread and scheduling an appointment for a week or maybe longer out, that's pretty much a no-brainer. People want to know ASAP. Anyway, after that appointment, my wife called me crying, which is the natural response you'd have when being told it looks like cancer. Then she called her mom, her sisters, and all her friends. Following that, she came home and took the afternoon off from work. We finished The Watchmen on HBO, and then for something light, Josie and the Pussycats, which, for the record, deserved much better than it got. It's a damned good satire and takes on consumerism, trends, and the lemming-like nature of certain demographics. So, blow me, critics that have it at 53% on Rotten Tomatoes. It might not be high art, but it's a fun, intelligent movie. Well, after all that, we read our respective books in bed, turned out the lights, and slept. The next morning, my wife got up, went to the gym, came home, ate breakfast, and went down to her office and started working. Because that's what you do. Bad news? Buck up, Buttercup. You absorb it and deal with it, because life moves on whether you're ready to or not. During that time, personally, I was probably faking it more than I am willing to admit. I went about my day posting stupid shit online, I mowed the lawn, went to the gym, but my mind kept traveling to the darkest places possible. And it sucked. I'm sure her mind was slipping to those depths too, but I couldn't burden her with my bullshit. I tried staying on the straight and narrow, saying all the right things. It's probably nothing. If it is the worst possible outcome, then they're gonna cut it out and everything will be fine. I also believed that. Maybe I was in denial, but I do think that no matter what, everything turns out okay. For example, when my wife and I found out that we couldn't conceive naturally, she was devastated. I figured modern science would have our back. When the first IVF embryo didn't take, my wife felt defeated. I told her it would happen when it was supposed to. Now we have 2 kiddos we love more than anything. Life doesn't happen on our terms, it just happens. And the biopsy, that happened on Tuesday, June 30th. We didn't really talk much about it, mostly because we were in the mindset of continually moving forward. The amazing thing about resiliency is in the post-response actions. I'm not sure if either of us followed a 5 stages of list of grief or acceptance. But after the initial shock, normalcy set in. Because, as we had to remember, we were dealing with a fear of the unknown. We didn't really receive any bad news. Worry is all projection. The mind creating unwanted scenarios, traveling down rabbit holes and imagining the worst. It's not healthy, but that's how the mind works. We humans like fear. The brain likes fear. It's unfortunate and absurd, but for reasons I don't understand, it's easier to worry you might have cancer than be confident you don't. The day of the biopsy, I drove her to the hospital. Not because she'd be unable to drive when it was over, but for moral support. We made our way to the imaging center on the 4th floor and were shown to a small room. And then we waited. It felt like hours, but in reality was only minutes. Such is the boredom you feel while at any doctor's office. Luckily, my wife is a social butterfly. A gym friend of hers happened to work in that ward and stopped by. "I wanted to make sure you were okay with my being in the room with you," she stated. Some women are shy when it comes to exposing themselves in front of folks they know, but not my wife. She was happy to have a familiar face with her and gave the green light for her friend to see her shirtless. They shared a smile, as women tend to do, and then it was back to twirling thumbs. Because we were at a university hospital, our doctor was actually a resident, and he was so damned nice it's not to be believed. The procedure was explained in detail, gonna poke a needle in there and extract a sample, yo, and then it was a return to waiting. When they finally came for my wife, I gave her a hug goodbye and sat in the room alone. The procedure itself was shorter than the actual waiting up front. My wife came back, changed, and was ready to go get cupcakes within 30 minutes. Because, of course, you get cupcakes after a cancer biopsy. It was supposed to take 3 to 5 business days for the results, which might normally mean Friday, but that Friday was technically a holiday, so we were prepared to be in limbo for almost a week. But 2 days later, my wife got a phone call. Her friend saw the results come in, and though standard procedure is for all results to go through several layers of red tape before calling the patient, this friend called the doctor in charge on his personal phone to get clearance to tell my wife immediately. It's good to have friends with connections. End result? Benign. We got the best possible news. The mood in the house was that of relief and joy. We were, and are, thankful. All the fear and worry was for nothing. Sort of. I suppose it's all perspective. A scare like this is horrible, yes, but it also serves as a reminder. We humans are fragile creatures, and life is precious. If you'd like to learn more about me, I can be found at nathantimmel.com. I also have an author page on Amazon where I have several works of nonfiction and one work of fiction. Thanks for listening, and even though it's a cliche, and I apologize, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share. The algorithm appreciates it.